Motivation is one of the most overrated concepts in personal development. Not because motivation is useless, but because most people misunderstand what it is and what it isn't. Motivation is a temporary emotional state. It's not a system, it's not a strategy, and it's definitely not something you can build a life on. Yet most people structure their entire approach to growth around how they feel. If I feel motivated, I'll work. If I don't feel motivated, I'll wait. That logic quietly trains you to outsource your progress to your mood. That's a bad deal, because moods are volatile. They change with sleep, stress, environment, feedback, even weather. If your output depends on how you feel, your output will always be inconsistent. I learned this the hard way. There was a stretch of my life where I was consuming motivation constantly. Podcasts, speeches, quotes, long-form interviews with people who had already made it. And for a few hours at a time, I'd feel locked in, focused, ready to take on everything. Then the friction showed up, work got heavy, energy dipped, life happened, and that motivation evaporated. That's when I realized something uncomfortable. I wasn't building momentum. I was borrowing emotion. And borrowed emotion has interest. It wears off fast, and when it does, you're usually left worse off than before. Here's the part people don't want to hear. If motivation actually worked, most people would already be ahead. We live in the most motivationally saturated era in history. You can get fired up in under 30 seconds on any platform. Yet results haven't scaled with inspiration, because inspiration doesn't create systems. It doesn't change environments. It doesn't remove friction. It just makes you feel like you're closer to action than you actually are. There's a psychological term for this. When you consume content about doing hard things, your brain gets some of the same reward as actually doing them. It's why people can binge productivity content and still feel productive without having done anything. It's a false signal. You feel progress without progress, and that's dangerous. It trains you to associate growth with consumption instead of execution. At some point, I had to confront this in my own behavior. I noticed I was good at planning, good at thinking, good at analyzing, but inconsistent at shipping. And inconsistency compounds just as fast as consistency does, just in the wrong direction. The turning point was realizing that discipline isn't about forcing yourself to suffer. That's the caricature people have in their head. White-knuckling through life, grinding until burnout, hating the process. That's not discipline. That's mismanagement. Real discipline is about design. You don't rely on motivation. You design your environment, so the right behavior is the default. You don't rely on willpower. You reduce the number of decisions you have to make when you're tired. You don't rely on emotional highs. You build routines that run when you're emotionally flat. That's the difference between amateurs and builders. Amateurs need to feel like it. Builders don't negotiate with themselves. Here's a practical way to think about it. Every behavior you repeat lives in one of three zones: low friction, neutral friction, high friction. Most people accidentally design their good habits to live in high friction. They want to train, but their gear is buried. They want to build, but their tools aren't ready. They want to learn, but their environment is distracting. Then they blame motivation when they don't follow through. That's not a motivation problem. That's a systems problem. People with leverage design their environment, so the behavior they want is easy, obvious, and hard to avoid. If you have to convince yourself to do the right thing every day, your system is broken. Here's another layer people miss. Motivation is often reactive. It spikes when you see someone else win. It spikes when you feel behind. It spikes when you feel a hit to your ego. Those are emotional triggers. Building your life around reactive emotion is how you end up chasing instead of building. You see someone succeed. You feel a surge. You overcommit. Then reality sets in. That creates a boom and bust cycle. High motivation, aggressive goals, burnout, guilt, reset. Most people live in that loop for years and call it working on themselves. It's not growth. It's emotional whiplash. The alternative is boring, but it works. Non-negotiable minimums, predictable routines, systems that don't care how you feel. Not because you're trying to be robotic, but because consistency is more powerful than intensity. Intensity creates stories. Consistency creates results. Another piece most people don't consider is identity. Your identity determines what you tolerate. If you see yourself as someone trying to be disciplined, you'll constantly negotiate. If you see yourself as someone who shows up, you don't negotiate. You just execute. Identity is upstream of behavior. That's why people who change their self-concept change their actions without trying harder. Builders don't think in terms of motivation. They think in terms of standards. Standards are quieter than motivation, but they're more reliable. You don't need to feel motivated to meet a standard. You either meet it or you don't. And if you don't, you course correct. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Waiting for motivation is a form of avoidance. It gives you a socially acceptable excuse to delay action. I'm just not in the right headspace today. I'll start when I feel more ready. I need to get my mindset right first. Those statements sound reasonable. They're just dressed up procrastination. Nobody feels ready at the beginning of anything meaningful. Readiness is the reward for showing up, not the prerequisite. Another thing that helps is separating emotion from execution. You don't need to feel confident to take a step. You need to take a step to earn confidence. Confidence is downstream of evidence. Evidence comes from reps. There's no shortcut around that. Here's how to actually build momentum without relying on motivation. First, define non-negotiable minimums. Not ambitious targets, minimum standards you can hit even on bad days. Second, pre-decide your schedule. Don't wake up and ask what you're going to work on. That's a negotiation you'll lose when you're tired. Third, reduce friction for the right behaviors. Set your environment so the next right action is obvious and easy. Fourth, increase friction for the wrong behaviors. Make distractions inconvenient. Make bad habits harder to access. Fifth, track reps, not outcomes. Outcomes fluctuate. Reps compound. Sixth, build identity through evidence. Don't tell yourself you're disciplined. Collect proof by doing the work. Over time, the identity sticks. Here's the big picture. The people who look consistent from the outside aren't more motivated than you. They just stopped making their progress conditional on how they feel. They built systems that run in low energy states. They built routines that don't require emotional buy-in. They built standards they hold themselves to quietly. That's what actually scales. If you're tired of the cycle of getting fired up and burning out, this is your exit ramp. Stop waiting to feel motivated. Start building systems, design your environment, set standards, reduce friction, stack reps. Motivation will show up sometimes. That's fine. Use it when it does. But don't build your life around a feeling that doesn't answer when you call. Before you click away, let me leave you with something practical. Don't just treat this like another video you agreed with and then forgot about. Pick one system you're going to build this week, not 10. One habit you're going to make automatic. One friction point you're going to remove. One small standard you're going to set and hold. Because nothing changes in your life from understanding this. Things change when you implement it. If you're serious about building leverage, this channel is going to be for you. I'm not here to hype you up for 15 minutes and send you back to the same patterns. I'm here to talk about systems, structure, and the long game. So if you haven't already, hit the like button. Not for me, for the algorithm. It helps this reach people who are tired of the motivation loop and ready to build something real. Subscribe to the channel if you want more of this. This is the lane we're staying in. And if you've got someone in your life who keeps talking about starting soon or getting ready, send them this video. Not to call them out, to give them a nudge. One last thing. Don't wait to feel motivated tomorrow. Do one small, boring, unsexy action today that moves something forward. That's how momentum actually starts. I'll see you in the next one.